Hello, Termites. It's night 85. Isn't that amazing? I know some of you really, are you going to restaurants? You eating outside? You going in? I haven't gone in. A lot of takeout though. Not afraid of that. But I probably would sit outside too if it wasn't so flippin' hot. It's a little hot for that. Gave my dad a haircut. I'll be putting that on Instagram. It's pretty good too. For free and not having a license. Worked out fine, I think. May have to start charging. It's 2 haircuts now. I've given unprofessionally and with no license. Is there a board that certifies people that will come looking for me? If so, apologies in advance. And since I didn't take any money, I don't think I should be in trouble. I'm not putting anyone else out of work. Okay, Tanya's out on the road and she's taking the baby, but she also took mama and her sister, so everybody's looking after the baby. My life settled down a great deal because of the baby. It was partly because I felt the responsibility of motherhood, but partly because I seldom felt lonely or in need of a party or a show. I could go back to the bus and head down the road, cuddle in my little girl. I was tired some of the time simply because of Presley's feedings and schedule. But on the other hand, I didn't have any hangovers to sleep off. There were definite benefits as far as my lifestyle was concerned. Presley and I spent a lot of hours together rolling down America when she was rolling across America while she was a baby, and she was too little to remember any of it, but she had a lot of experiences out there on the road. She even went to prison once. I played a fair in Lucasville, Ohio on August 9th. While Lacosta, Presley, and I were having breakfast at a local Bob Evans, a woman approached me. "Are you Tanya Tucker?" I said I was, expecting an autograph request, but instead she said, "Did you know Johnny Paycheck is right down the road at the Chillicothe Correctional Facility?" Johnny's legal battles over a bar shooting in Ohio had gone on so long, I didn't know for sure when he'd finally been sentenced or where he'd gone to prison. I didn't even know Johnny Paycheck did go to, he went to prison, he shot someone? I don't really know what he's saying, but I remember the name just because it's a funny name, Paycheck. I did know that I disagreed with the decision since from everything I heard, the man he took a shot at later admitted he was at fault in the incident. We went back to the bus, and I'm sure that my bus driver never expected me to say, "Head on down the road, Lee. We're going to the prison in Chillicothe." I called the prison from the bus, and when I finally got through to speak to the warden, I asked if it was possible to speak to Johnny Paycheck. "Do you mean Donnie Lytle?" he asked. I guess prison was a lot like Betty Ford. You don't get to use your stage names. The warden didn't act like he believed it was Tanya Tucker. He said come to the prison, he'd meet with me anyway. When I got there, he just shook his head and escorted me to the infirmary. I offered to do a show at the prison if it would help Johnny get out any quicker. No. I don't even think an Elvis show could get you out of prison. And it didn't occur. Oh, I forgot to say what I'm drinking. Ghost Pines, a nice Pinot Noir. Probably less than $20. It's really nice, delicious. I put a little ice in here because I'm 1,000 years old. Can I have a little ice in my wine? Thanks. The warden didn't act like he believed it was me, blah, blah, blah. When I got there, he shook his head. He wasn't going to get out of prison if I did a show. It didn't occur to me later the warden probably could have slapped me with bribery charges. No, that's not bribery. That's not bribery. Johnny couldn't believe it was me either, and I still can't believe he lived through those several years he spent in prison because he was very sick with emphysema. I asked him if he needed anything, and he said extra pajamas. That's sad. Then he thought about it a few minutes and asked me if I'd mind singing on an album called Jailhouse Rock that he'd recorded with Hank Cochran right before he was sentenced. I promised I'd call Hank as soon as I got to Nashville, and I headed toward my own show. On the way, we stopped at a store, and I ran in and bought a pile of PJs and slippers for the bus driver to deliver to the prison while I performed at the concert. When I got back to Nashville, I went straight to Hank Cochran's house and sang on the Jailhouse Rock. I didn't even think anything of it, though. I thought then, as I do now, that it would have been a million seller if it had been advertised on television with an 800 number. Huh. The music business is the one that's full of unfinished projects and finished projects that are lost because of lack of follow-through. Exactly. We had 3 hits, singles from Strong Enough to Bend, and Capitol decided that's all they'd release from the album. Strong Enough to Bend went to the top of the charts, and the label followed with 2 more hits, Highway Robbery and Call on Me. But I balked at only 3 singles since I wanted Daddy and Home to be a single and a video. When the word came down, they'd go ahead and send it out to the radio, but to not waste money on a video, I hit the fan. I insisted the label release the song to the radio, and I decided to make the video myself. Well, there's a good idea. I hired a video crew. We shot the clip with me sitting in the motel room waiting on the tour bus to be repaired and thinking about the home fires. I put together a series of old photographs and home movies of me and Dad. I thought it was such a beautiful, touching video, and it meant so much to Dad that I made it. If the song had contained an important message when I was completely running out wild, it meant twice as much that I was now a mother. The single stiffed at number 27. That didn't have a thing to do with the fact that I'd had a baby out of wedlock. It had to do with what I call lesson number 38 in Recording Artist 101. Never force your record label to release a song it doesn't want to release. You're laying yourself wide open for a big, see? We told you so. If the company ain't the pilot, your record ain't gonna fly. So all you little wannabe song people, you just remember that. If the company ain't the pilot, your record ain't gonna fly. But now you can do whatever you want on your own mostly, I think. I got my first big chance to show off my daughter at the industry to the industry at my birthday party that year I held at the Magnolia Room at Opryland the night of the 1989 CMA Awards, where I lost female vocalists again. Me and Susan Lucci. Oh well. I wore a simple floor-length black gown with my hair up, wanting to be this classic, elegant birthday gala. The party was strictly a no drinking and no affair, this time by my orders, not Dad's. But even without alcohol, my parties can get crazy. There, in the Magnolia Ballroom, were over 400 guests, including Marie Osmond, Garth Brooks, Highway 101's Paulette Carson, and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And a crowd of industry executives stood in elegant attire. Mother and Dad presented me with 3 miniature horses. Wow, I'd like that. That's a good goddamn birthday. Dad led the horses out, and they promptly dumped several piles on the ballroom floor. I'm sure the people appreciated that. Then we got them to the hotel elevator. They performed a couple of encores. It reminded me of one time when I was around 20. I drove my Porsche to Denver City, Texas to visit some of my relatives. While I was there, one of the family offered me 3 ducks and 2 geese for Tuckahoe. That's her ranch. I didn't want to wait to have them shipped, so I loaded them right into the porch, and we headed back to the ranch. Ducks quacking, geese honking all the way. You can dress me up and take me out, but I can turn into a hillbilly real quick. Yes, I definitely think that's been established. I gotta get gone. So maybe I'll name my next special that. I gotta get gone. But we can't really film specials right now because you can't get COVID insurance for a crew. How's that for interesting? How's that for, that's too bad too, because I was going to film one in June in Minneapolis. That was the plan. Maybe next year. Maybe I'll get taller by then. Who knows? I felt so lucky through the first 6 months of Presley's Life to have the backing of my record label, with the exception of my wanting Daddy and Home to be a single and video. Capitol couldn't have been more supportive. Over the years, I've learned many times that unless your label considers you a priority, one of the artists whose releases are carefully planned and pushed hard to both radio and retail, you'll probably be left standing in somebody's dust. On December 11, 1989, a bomb dropped on Music Row when EMI, Capitol's parent company, named Jimmy Bowen the new president of Capitol Records. I thought, here we go. He had a reputation of being one of the toughest men in the business. An executive and artist better not push if he or she wanted to keep a career going. He fired all but two or three people out of Capitol within the first week. Forrest Long was out, of course. Bonnie Rasmussen was out. It was the second time around for Bonnie and Jim. Bowen had taken over MCA Records a few years ago, and they've been caught in that corporate house cleaning. Being a record executive is as chancy as being an artist. Bowen always did that. He'd go through the label like a steamroller and replace everyone with his own hand-picked staff. He did it to ensure loyalty, and I knew that a new company president has to have complete loyalty. But knowing it doesn't make me any less nervous. Bowen was a noted record producer, and he was also known to force artists to change producers even when they had a long-standing relationship. I did not want to leave Jerry Crutchfield, but I didn't want to lose my priority status. The label's new kid, Garth Brooks, a.k.a. Chris Gaines. Remember when he did that? He fractured off and made himself not himself anymore. Then he recorded as this person, but we all knew it was him. That was a very strange experiment. The label's new kid, Garth Brooks, was making waves on the chart, and Bowen was bringing acts like Eddie Rabbitt, Lacey Dalton, and the Gatlins from his previous gigs at Universal. He could very easily turn his attention to them and forget about Tanya Tucker, no matter how well my records were charting. I had no idea what he thought of me as an artist or my single mother status. So we didn't know what to expect when he called for his first meeting with us. He said he needed to talk over career direction as well. Oh, that's never good. As well as go over the photo shoot I'd done for Tennessee Woman. One hopeful sign was that Bowen had hired Kathy Gurley's company to represent the label's public relations. She had been a part of our initial Presley press release plan, so I figured she was in my corner. We took the whole family to the first meeting. I carried Presley wrapped in a fluffy blanket, and Mother and Dad accompanied us. I'm sure they were fired up about that. Presley was only 6 months old, but in her pink dress and matching headband, she looked like a star, too. I was surprised at how cordial and laid back Bowen was. He fussed over Presley a little bit, then we got down to business. From the moment he started talking, I knew everything was going to be okay. Tanya, you're one of the label's biggest top priorities, and I want to see you selling gold, winning awards, and taking your rightful place as one of the industry's most important female artists. That's my job, to see that it happens. Your job is to continue to make hit records with Jerry Crutchfield. I don't know if he could hear me say whew under my breath. Bowen went on to explain that the new regime wanted me to have a more uptown, classy image. Forget that wild country party girl. Forget the sex pot. I was a young mother to an adult woman, and everything from publicity pictures to my album covers to the clothing I wore for televised interviews should reflect this new class. A photographer showed up about then to take a shot of Bowen and me for the trades. All right, I yelled, and then I ran up and jumped right into Bowen's lap and shouted, hey, here's your photo app. I couldn't dump the old image completely. Now, come on. She don't want to have the real Tanya to get gone. She just has to look like Mama Tanya for the time. Bowen turned red and said, well, make me a print of that, but don't show it to my wife. That was my introduction to the new capital, Nashville, and their intro to the new, much classier me. As Presley grew from, now we're at chapter 47, Termites. Yeah, we'll be done with this. It won't take too long. Proud of us. Everybody stuck through it. As Presley grew from an infant to a baby with one personality and identity of her own, I began to wonder if I made the right decision about keeping Ben out of her life. I'm surprised Ben didn't figure it out, or maybe Ben did, and Ben didn't want nothing to do with it. She was too young to ask any questions, but what would she have to say to me later? I knew that being denied a father during her first year was an important developmental period. My dad, of course, was the grandpa of the century. He doted on her, but both my parents did. But a doting grandfather is not a father, and I agonized for months over what to do. I had no idea what his reaction would be or what to expect from him. Would he deny the baby was his? I didn't see how possible, given both the mathematics and Presley's face. She looked so much like him. Or would he fly off the handle and cuss me out because I kept him in the dark? The decision was taken out of my hands in March of 1990 when I took 9-month-old Presley to the Larry Gatlin golf tournament in Texas. I'd not heard from Ben, nor had I seen Jeff McKay, the mutual friend who introduced us, but since I'd gotten pregnant. But Jeff loves golf tournaments, and he showed up at Larry's. I attended the charity auction and the reception that night before the tournament to perform Texas When I Die. I know that song. An auction off personal memorabilia to help the cause. I was standing towards the back holding Presley when Jeff made his way through the crowd and found me. He took a few minutes and then right out of the blue, there's no mistaking that, baby. She's Ben's. I said, well, Jeff, it doesn't take a great mathematician to count back months to the CMA Awards. What I didn't know was that Jeff had sought me out that night on Ben's behalf. Ben hadn't thought much about it when he first heard I was pregnant, figuring I'd met somebody and he'd one day read about the father of my baby. He also started a relationship with someone else, and he was busy working and going to auditions. Time slipped by, but months after Presley's birth, I was still refusing to name the father. He started wondering, He happened to be talking to Jeff one afternoon in L.A. and asked if he thought that Presley could be his baby. I'll probably see Tanya at the golf tournament this weekend, Jeff told him. Well, find out if that's my child. One more paragraph, shall we? Let's do it. First thing Jeff did when he got back to L.A. was to call Ben and tell him he had a baby girl. Ben says he went through an array of emotions that afternoon. Anger for me keeping the pregnancy from him. Fear at learning he was a parent. Love for the child he'd never seen. He also said he felt a staggering sense of responsibility because family is very important to him. He promptly called Bo Tucker in an attempt to track me down. Dad took his number as if I still didn't have it in my book. Now, come on. As it happened, I was due to appear at a telethon in Los Angeles right after the golf tournament, and Dad called me at Century City where I was staying. In some ways, calling Ben was easier because Presley was not with me. Whenever we initially had much to say to each other, we would not be complicated by his daughter being in the same room. I was apprehensive talking to Ben. I still didn't know what his reaction would be. Once he saw the child and realized he'd missed almost the first year of his life, would he even ever speak to me? I called him, and the first thing he said was, "I hear I have a baby girl." I told him I thought he knew that all along. He said that only in the past few weeks has he even considered the fact it might be his father. He might be a father. He came straight to Century City. The minute we sat down, we both started crying. We talked about family and how important having a family for us was. What we didn't talk about was us. I think we both believed that for whatever once we had was long since dead. I told Ben I was heading out the next day for Branson. What? Branson, Missouri, shout out. What? They were great golf. I can't say the shows are great, but the golf there is great. And that Presley and the nanny were meeting me with the tour bus at the airport. "I'm coming with you," he said. "I know," I said. I felt like a big weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Presley would know her father. There'd be no heartbreaking scenes later on in life when she asked why I hid the truth from her and her father. For once, I was doing the right thing. We landed in Springfield, Missouri. The following afternoon, when we got to the airport, Ben stopped in his tracks as if he'd been hit. Coming across the room in his stroller was his 9-month-old daughter. Once again, tears were pouring down our faces. He stayed in Branson to get to know his little girl. In the next few days, he just poured his heart out about his feelings for her. I had some things to say, too. I made it clear that I didn't need anything from him except for that he loved his daughter. He made it clear to me that from that day on, Presley Tucker, who had Dad, who would be there for her. Well, that's just such a wonderful ending to what could have been a mess. It could have been just a terrible tornado of emotions that didn't go well. This went well. Now Presley, Tanita, whatever, knows her daddy, Ben, the actor who was on Magnum P.I. All right, termites. It's still hot. Not getting any cooler. Might go up into the mountains. A little cooler up there. What else? Y'all ever seen Gringo? That documentary about John McAfee? I don't even know who he was. That's how much little I know about computers. I'm like, what's a McAfee? I don't even know. You should really watch that. I've never seen anything so bizarre in my life. And that man is still out running around, even though I totally think he murdered that guy. And he's on Twitter. If you want to follow him on Twitter, it's very strange. Very strange man. Okay, termites. Tuck yourselves in. Are you watching Yellowstone still? It's completely ridiculous, but I like it because somebody in their family murders a newcomer every episode. Somebody's going down. All right, termites. You ready? Got your eyes closed? Night-night, termites.